7 months, that was how long one island city forced Alexander the Great to stop, improvise, and attempt the impossible. Tyre was not just another town on the Levantine coast. It was a fortified Phoenician city whose strongest quarter stood offshore behind walls and harbors. For centuries, Tyre had thrived as one of the great centers of Mediterranean trade. Wealth, ships, and seafaring skill made the city unusually resilient. Phoenician influence spread across the sea from the Levant to Cyprus, North Africa, and beyond. Tyre stood near the heart of that maritime world. The sea was Tyre's first line of defense. Phoenician vessels carried goods and people, but in war they also carried warning, supply, and resistance. A city shaped by ships could be hard to isolate. Tyre's naval tradition helped make it more than a walled settlement. It was a moving network. Even nature favored the defenders. Wind, surf, and open water made any direct assault difficult before a single spear had been thrown. Tyre was also a sacred city. The god Melkart was central to its identity, and his sanctuary was bound up with civic pride and political legitimacy. To Greeks, Melkart could be associated with Heracles. But to the Tyrians, the sanctuary was not a symbol Alexander could simply claim on demand. Tyre's wealth was visible in the symbols it left behind. This was a city accustomed to commerce, prestige, and the hard logic of survival. Alexander arrived in Phoenicia after a string of victories had transformed him from Macedonian king into a continental threat to Persia. His larger goal was clear: break Persian power by taking the coasts, denying enemy fleets safe harbors, and pushing ever deeper into imperial territory. The campaign that brought him here had already begun brilliantly. At the Granicus River, Alexander proved that the invasion of Asia was no reckless gamble. Then came the crushing victory at Issus. Alexander's prestige soared, but the war was still unfinished as long as the eastern Mediterranean remained contested. Ports mattered if hostile fleets could still use Phoenician cities. Alexander's communications and rear could remain exposed. So he advanced down the coast, taking city after city. Most submitted. Tyre did not. Tyrian envoys negotiated, but they refused Alexander entry into the island city on his terms. What looked like a religious dispute quickly became a test of power. To Alexander, refusal could not be ignored. If Tyre defied him and survived, other cities might learn that resistance was possible. Behind Alexander stood the disciplined world of Macedon, a court and army capable of turning bold decisions into hard military reality. The culture that produced him celebrated courage, pursuit, and elite warfare. Alexander brought that confidence into every campaign. Yet even the most aggressive conqueror faced a problem at Tyre. There was no easy road to the walls, and no quick storming party could leap the sea. Ancient siegecraft normally depended on towers, rams, archers, and protected approaches. Against a mainland city, those methods could be devastating. Tyre's island position changed everything. Before Alexander could batter the walls, he first had to create ground where none existed. His answer was astonishing. Build a causeway from the mainland out to the city using timber, stone, and the rubble of old Tyre. The deeper the work pushed into the water, the harder it became. Tyrian missiles struck the laborers, and the sea itself fought the engineers. The defenders were not passive. They harassed the builders, attacked the works, and used their own knowledge of local conditions to slow the advance. The siege became a contest not only of courage but of construction, ship handling, and logistics. Tyre was forcing Alexander to learn a new kind of war. He responded by strengthening the project and expanding support at sea. Naval resources increasingly mattered as much as the army on shore. Eventually, allied fleets from Phoenician and Cypriot cities gave Alexander command of the waters around Tyre. The island was no longer secure behind its harbors. With sea access threatened and the Mo pushing forward, the defenders lost the advantage that had made Tyre seem untouchable at the beginning. Siege towers and engines could now be brought closer. Pressure mounted from multiple directions instead of only from the narrow line of the causeway. The city that had relied on separation from the mainland was being slowly connected to the enemy by force. At last, Alexander's forces coordinated assaults by land and sea. Breaches opened, boarding actions struck the harbors, and Tyre's resistance began to crack. Once the city was entered, the struggle turned into slaughter. Ancient sources describe a brutal sack, mass killing, and the enslavement of thousands. Tyre's fall secured Alexander's position on the coast. The road south toward Egypt and the wider eastern Mediterranean lay open. The victory also helped destroy Persian naval relevance in the region. By taking the ports, Alexander was winning the war at sea without being a traditional naval commander. After Tyre, Alexander could move into Egypt, where his image would be reshaped again under new titles and traditions. But the siege changed more than the next step of a campaign. The causeway permanently altered Tyre's geography, binding the island to the mainland. That is why the siege of Tyre still matters. It was a moment when engineering ruthlessness and strategic vision combined to change a city, and history with lasting force.